Well, beloved dub motherfuckers, what's going on, everyone? It is everyone's favorite jack of all trades with a foul mouth, Commodore Urban. Welcome back to another awesome fucking video, guys. And before I do dive in, I want to give a big shout out to all you guys, my viewers, my subscribers, for sticking around watching this shit. It's the reason why I fucking do this for all you guys, so yeah. And this is going to be the start of a new series I'm going to be doing, a series of videos for the 73rd anniversary of the maiden voyage of this lovely lady here, the SS United States. And as you can see, I have my travel agent's portrait, a couple of drawings of the lovely lady herself, what she would look like as a person. Don't fucking judge. And my 1/600 scale model of the Big U by Revell. And today's going to be part one of my reading of the children's storybook Grandfather Ship, the SS United States. And it's a story about a little boy who he finds out his grandfather was the last captain of the United States. Don't he look familiar? Well, he should. Because it is Commodore Jon Alexanderson, the last commanding officer of the Big U. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive right on in. Grandfather Ship, the SS United States by E.B. Fletcher. Illustrations by Wendy Bruce. There's acknowledgements. Now, to my friends, the Commodore and his beloved Elizabeth, E.B. Fletcher. Table of contents. And yes, there are 11 chapters, epilogue, and all this. Alright. Chapter 1. Your grandfather is coming to see us this weekend, John. He and Grandma Liz will be here tomorrow afternoon when you come home from school, said Mama. Oh boy, yelped John, jumping up and down. Mama, do you think Grandfather and I can go down to see the ships? You'll have to ask him, John, but I don't see why not. Even the lonely ship? Asked John. Mama sighed and said, You'll have to ask him. Now run upstairs and wash up for dinner. John ran up the stairs, taking two at a time. He scooted the wooden stool over to the sink in the bathroom and leaned over to turn on the faucet. I can't wait until I'm 7 years old, thought John to himself. Then maybe I'll be old enough not to need this old stool anymore. At school on Friday, John had art class and he painted a watercolored picture using black, red, blue, and white paint. When he got home from school, he saw Grandfather's white Lincoln parked in front of the house. John ran up to the front steps, burst through the door, and clutching his picture, dashed into the living room where Grandfather and Grandma Liz were seated. John scrambled up into Grandfather's arms, waiting arms, still clutching his watercolor picture. Grandfather lifted John high in the air. Why, John, my boy, let me get a good look at you. Haven't seen you in several months. John squealed with delight as Grandfather held him up in the air. Roy, said Grandma Liz sternly, put him down. You're going to scare him, or worse, drop him. No, he's not, Grandma, said John, laughing. I like it. You see, Liz, said Grandfather, swinging John back down to the floor. Look, Grandfather, said John, I painted you a picture today in art class. They have art classes in first grade now, do they? Inquired Grandfather. Uh-huh, giggled John as Grandfather leaned down and tickled him. Grandfather sat back down in the wing chair by the fireplace and studied the picture that John had drawn. As Grandfather gazed at the picture, he looked at John, who was grinning from ear to ear with anticipation of approval. It's the lonely ship, Grandfather, said John, the one at Penn's Landing. Grandfather looked at John and pondered the drawing. Grandfather's eyes grew distant and a faint sadness caused them to become dark. Grandma Liz got up from her chair and stood behind Grandfather and gazed at the artwork. She patted Grandfather on the shoulder and smiled at John. Dinner's ready, called Mama, as she brought out steaming plates of spaghetti from the kitchen. John, run upstairs and wash your hands. John scrambled from the room and up the white set of stairs. At dinner, John asked Grandfather, "Can we go to the naval base and look at the ships?" Grandma Liz smiled at Grandfather. Grandfather hesitated a moment, leaned over and tousled John's hair and said, "Why, sure." John grinned and said, "Yes," while looking heavenward. Then he looked at the faces before him as if suddenly remembered something and said, "And the lonely ship, too?" Grandfather was silent for a moment, giving Grandma Liz time to speak. "You cleaned your plate well tonight, John. I think spaghetti is one of your favorite." "I was hungry," said John, wiping his mouth with the linen dinner napkin. I didn't eat much lunch today. They had mystery meat again." Grandma Liz laughed and said, "Well, Evelyn baked you some of those chocolate chip cookies you love. How about some for dessert?" Grandfather cleared his throat. "I think I like some of those. How about you, sport?" "Sure, Grandfather." As Grandmother and Mama cleaned the plates from the dining room table, Mama asked, "How is dear old Evelyn doing? Does she keep house for you, or has she gone part-time?" "Oh, darn, she comes when she can. She still does the ironing. Nothing gets real dirty anymore." And here's the first illustration in the book. And you can see. As Mama took some plates into the kitchen, she called out to Grandma Liz, "Leave Jack's place set. He'll be late coming home from work." John leaned over to Grandpa and whispered, "Daddy's working on a big project and he's got to have it ready by Monday." "Oh," said Grandfather. "Well, we'll keep you busy so Dad can work, huh?" "Okay, Grandfather." Chapter 2. Saturday afternoon's weather was sunny and bright, with cool temperatures making the early spring air crisp. John and Grandfather climbed into the Lincoln and off they went to the naval base to look at the retired fleet. After they had parked the car, Grandfather and John walked dockside looking at the ghostly gray hulks as seagulls glided softly overhead. John asked, "Why do you call these ships like these?" "They're called mothballed," responded Grandfather. "Like when Mama puts mothballs in my sweaters?" "Something like that," chuckled Grandfather. They walked a little further on, then Grandfather said, "See that ship? That's a frigate. And see the guns on that one? Battleship, my boy. Those guns are massive and can do a lot of damage." "How come you know so much about these ships?" asked John. Grandfather smiled and said, "Because I served on several ships such as these during the war." "Wow! You never told me that before, Grandfather. Tell me more about them." Grandfather looked down at the ground for a moment, sighed, and then looked up at the radar mast on the nearest ship. "That was a long time ago, John." John slipped his tiny hand into Grandfather's as they continued to walk along. John lovingly looked into Grandfather's blue weathered eyes and said, "Please tell me about the ships, Grandfather." Grandfather smiled, and as they slowly walked dockside to the mothball fleet, Grandfather told John about being on the Naval Reserve and sailing the Pacific. "One of the first ships that I was on was called the Melville. We sailed out of Pearl Harbor in Hawaii and later to the Caribbean. After that, I took command of the Livingston in San Francisco. That ship was true Navy with its crew." John was hanging on to every word. "Wow, Grandfather, you took command? You mean like a pirate?" Grandfather stopped walking and looked down at his tiny grandson. "What? Pirate?" Then began to laugh. "No, nothing like that. Taking command of a ship means that you're the CO, the captain. You're in charge." "Oh, I get it," said John, nodding his head. "What other ships did you go on?" "Well, let's see. There was the Gage, then as well as I can remember, the General Leroy Eltridge." "Hey," said John, stopping in his track. "You had a ship that had your name, Leroy." Grandfather nodded his head in agreement and said, "Well, yes, our first names are the same." As they walked along, Grandfather's voice became softer and softer as he reflected on his days at sea, and then he and John just quietly continued. After a while, John said, "Are you sad?" Grandfather cleared his throat and looked lovingly down at his grandson and replied, "Yes, I guess." "Why?" "Because," said Grandfather, "these ships here were built to protect our country in the event of war. And it's a good thing to protect our country, but war, John, is a very sad event. A lot of people die when there's a war, and so it makes me sad." John asked, "Did you know people who died when it was war?" "Yes, I did." "Do you miss them?" "Oh, yes," said Grandfather, "but these Most people that I knew are safe now and they won't hurt anymore. You mean because they are in heaven with Jesus? Yes, John, said Grandfather. I don't want you to be sad. Grandfather smiled at him and said, there are a lot of things about life that can make you sad, but there are a lot of things that can make you happy too. Like snowflakes, asked John. Snowflakes? Yeah, snowflakes make me happy. Grandfather threw his head back and laughed. He put his arm around John and pulled him close as they walked along. Then Grandfather said, there were other ships that I sailed on and they didn't have as much to do with war. Those ships make me happy. What other ships, Grandfather? Well, there was the Washington, Manhattan, America, and, well, good ships. Say, all of this talking and walking is making me hungry. How about you and me getting ourselves some ice cream? That sounds good, said John as they made a loop around the docks back to where they parked. It's getting kind of close to dinner. See, my Mickey Mouse watch says it's 4 o'clock. John held his arm so that Grandfather could see. That's all right, replied Grandfather, chuckling. We'll still get some ice cream. John looked sheepishly and asked, can I get 2 scoops? Grandfather smiled and said, I think it can be all right. We don't have to tell Mama about this, do we? Grandfather winked. No. I think this one could be our secret. As they walked to the car, John pointed and said, look, there are 2 white cars just alike. Which one is yours? Grandfather squinted his eyes and, after adjusting his glasses, said, the one that says Big U2. See on the license plate? Big U2, echoed John. What's that? Grandfather looked over in the direction of the Walt Whitman Bridge and said, a nickname for a lady I knew many years ago. And of course, that's that lady right there. You better not let Grandma Liz know about that, John said with eyes and mouth wide open. I shouldn't, huh? No, she'll be jealous? Asked Grandfather. Yeah, jealous, said John. Okay, Grandfather chuckled to himself. I won't tell her. Now, how about some ice cream? Yeah, boy, said John as he hopped into the front seat with Grandfather buckling him in. There we go, guys. Now in the next video, I will start up on Chapter 3 when they go see the Lonely Ship. So thank you guys for listening until Part 2. Thank you very much and stay tuned.